Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a great week. Wasn't trying to hold this off till last minute due to both my full-time jobs being very busy this week. Not had much time to look over this, so we'll get into my speech. Uh, this speech is how hunting and fishing play an important role in conservation of wildlife and their habitats. Hunting and fishing is crucial to the well-being of the animals and the environment in which they live to maintain a healthy population. Throughout recent time, to be more exact, in the last 100 years, there has been a tiff between hunters and non-hunters. I found that this argument boils down to two problems. It's the difference in beliefs of the individual's values on the principle of loving and killing and the idea that hunting is not conservation. Through history, African tribes, the Aztecs, Indians, and the American frontiersmen have hunted. So to not hunt is a fairly new idea in the history of the human existence. According to an article published by the U.S. Census Bureau in 2006, only 14% of the U.S. population 16 years and older took part in recreational hunting and fishing. I become a hunter-angler through the line of patrilineal descent, meaning I learned from my father who learned from his father and so on. It is important to note that I grew up learning this is an act of love for the natural world. Like some Americans, my need for living close to nature brings me close to my ancestral heritage of surviving the natural world. Through this, I've learned to love wildlife and understand the need to protect the environment to ensure both will be around for generations to come. Over the next few minutes, we'll go over how hunting and angling and conservation are one and the same, the wildlife benefits of hunting, and Yellowstone's fight to save native trout. In order for people to understand how hunting and angling is good for the wildlife and the environment, I believe it's important to understand how hunters and anglers coincide with conservation. In 1871, Congress established the U.S. Commission of Fish and Fisheries after anglers pressured the government in restricting commercial fisheries of harvesting the dwindling number of popular fish species. In 1903, with bison on the verge of extinction from fur traders, President Roosevelt, who also was a hunter, established the National Wildlife Refuge System under the CFF to protect endangered wildlife. With this being said, not all hunters are conservationists. Hunting animals is not conservation itself. Hunters and anglers, through the love of fishing and hunting, become conservationists. Today, the CFF is known as the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. Since the early 1900s, hunters and anglers have been the driving force in laws and regulations established to protect wildlife and their habitat. These laws and regulations include the Pittman-Robertson Act, the Federal Duck Stamp Act. According to the U.S., on average, hunters and anglers pay more than $1.6 billion a year to conservation efforts. Now let's take a look at the benefits of hunting. One is population control. Some prey animals such as elk or deer can become overabundant in their habitat, mostly due to lack of predators or landscape changes. This overabundance can threaten the well-being of other species. Regulated hunting is one of the most effective tools that the state wildlife agencies can use to address the overpopulation of these species. If the population of white-tailed deer is too large, for example, wildlife managers might increase the season length or allow hunters to harvest one or more female deer to reduce the number of fawns born. So why is population control so important? Population control is important because of the resources animals have to survive. Overpopulation leads to sickness, disease, starvation, and even death. Chronic wasting disease, or CWD, is an illness that is going around in the deer population right now across the country. This disease has come from sick deer that have been starved due to the lack of population control and the human race encroaching on their land. CWD is spreadable from unhealthy to healthy deer herds. CWD is non-treatable. The only way for this disease to stop spreading is the infected die out. Hunters have contributed by slowing the spread of this disease by hunting and keeping deer populations small enough to stay healthy in their environment. Let's look at how hunters and anglers work towards conserving wildlife by taking wildlife. And so this is a good topic. This is Yellowstone's fight against the invasive species. So what are these invasive species? Did you know that in this iconic national park, they are fighting invasive fish species that are causing destruction and harm to all fish and land animals? Both bass and lake trout have been introduced to the rivers and lakes inside Yellowstone National Park. Both of these non-native species are detrimental to the health and populations of native fish, such as rainbow cutthroat trout and Arctic grayling in Yellowstone. Both of these non-native species are predators to the native species of Yellowstone, but not only are they detrimental to the fish population, the land animals like grizzly bears, black bears, and wolves feed on the native fish as a primary means of meat. With dying native fish populations, other animals are being affected by not having the means to eat as well, such as birds. So what are anglers doing? Yellowstone National Park and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services have mandated catch and keep practices. This mandate states that all anglers who catch any species of bass or lake trout must catch and keep, meaning not release these species back into the water. If any one of these two species are caught, the angler needs to mark the location of the catch and call Wildlife Services to record the catch. With the help of anglers, the mandate has helped with the rise in native fish populations within the national park. With this new knowledge of what hunters and anglers do for conservation and management wildlife and their habitats, I hope you have a greater appreciation or, in general, understanding for hunters and anglers. I'll leave you with a quote by President Roosevelt. He said, "The excellent people who protest against all hunting and consider sportsmen as enemies of wildlife are ignorant of the fact that in reality, the genuine sportsman is by all odds the most important factor in keeping the larger and more valuable wild creatures from total extermination." And that's the end of my speech. Thank you guys very much for listening. Hope you all have a great week.